Hey guys, welcome to Anti-Hedge. You're speaking to the founder once again, Matt, and I just wanted to bring you another educational video. But before we start, I just gotta say one thing that's super important. This is not financial advice. This shouldn't be misconstrued as such, and we do not accept any liabilities for losses that you may incur. All these videos are basically here for your educational purposes to deliver you some news, as well as bring to light things that you haven't seen in the crypto space. So with that in mind, you should be able to enjoy this video. And before I start this, I just got to say one thing for all my lovely followers and people watching this video. Thank you so much for watching and subscribing and being part of this journey. We just broke 500 subs yesterday, and I'm extremely happy, not only for myself, but for the hard work that my team has put into this, as well as for you, the viewer. Because more subscribers and more reach that we get, the better content we can provide for you. So I'm just gonna say it once again, thank you so much for subscribing and being active on our content, guys. Anti-Hedge, the whole team says thank you, from Matthew. Today we're gonna be talking about HBAR. And this is a very interesting subject because I actually forgot about HBAR. I bought a bag 2 years ago and just forgot about it. And then one day I get a call from a friend saying, hey, your HBAR. I'm like, my HBAR? What about my HBAR? And then he kind of put me on this thing where it was like, oh shit, I got to do another deep dive on this because this is a great cryptocurrency project that isn't really being covered, but it is excellent. So with that in mind, I'm going to tell you right now, here's where we're at. We just did a pretty big parabolic move. We pulled back a bit now, so we had a high of 57. Now we're back at 46, 47 cent range, right? The market cap is only 4.5 billion, so it's still relatively small considering the project that I'm about to bring forth for you guys. Circulating supply under 10 billion, not an outrageous number considering. And as you can see here, this is our market data, right? So I'm just going to tell you one thing before we even start looking at the chart here, is that as you can see right here, we're forming potentially a double bottom. So the next thing that we would test is we would crawl right back up to 57, and then that's where we would see maybe a slight pullback to 50, 55, 53, and off we go to the 70 cent range probably. Now, obviously, that's an opinion just based off of like technical analysis. It fully depends on if we could finish forming this double bottom. That would be basically the key point to decide whether or not we'll be hitting those price targets that I just said. But I just want to say one thing. If you look at the yearly growth on this, the yearly growth here, you can see there's clearly been just a lot of growth, and then we pulled back. And now it looks like we're getting ready for the next bullish cycle on this coin. Now, I don't want to get too deep into the technicals and all this stuff because I think you know how you guys, or I think you know how I feel about technicals. They're mostly jargon unless they're very obviously laid out. But this one looks like it's pretty obvious. So now I'm just going to get into more of the facts. Here's the facts. You look at HBAR as it is, you know, like you look at the website, it's extremely clean. Very nice website, well built, but here's where it gets interesting. It's a third generation public ledger, meaning that like Bitcoin was the first generation, only able to handle about 3 transactions per second. Then you have Ethereum, which was the second generation, and that was like the beginning of integration of smart contracts as well as like just being a higher throughput blockchain. Basically a blockchain that's able to handle more transactions. And that one's sitting at 12 plus transactions. So let's say 12 to 15 range. Then you got the third generation, which is HBAR, which is at 10,000 transactions per second plus. We'll go look at the standard fees. You got the standard fee, $22.50 for Bitcoin, $19.55 for Ethereum, and HBAR sitting at 1/1000th of a penny to send something. It's very low fees. Then you go to transaction confirmations. Bitcoin could be anywhere between 10 and 60 minutes. Ethereum 10 to 20 seconds. And HBAR has 3 to 5 seconds with finality. meaning that it's confirmed by the technology, by the blockchain within 3 to 5 seconds, which is very fast. Usually a lot of the time when people are boasting these high speeds, it's like it isn't necessarily confirmed that quickly. That's a pretty fast confirmation. And then this is where I want to really like say another thing that's very important is the energy consumption. Look at Bitcoin. It's 885 kilowatts per hour being burnt. And that's quite a lot of electricity. Then you look at Ethereum, which is 102 kilowatts per hour roughly. And then you're looking at HBAR here, which is 1/1000th of a kilowatt hour, basically, or rather 2000th. This is just a weird decimal here, but as you can see, it's 1/1000th 0.7, so 1700th of a kilowatt hour. So it's very low. It's extremely low to actually run a blockchain. That's very cheap. And more or less, all I have to say is this. Going back to the transactions per second one more time, because a lot of people, they'll talk about transactions per second, how are we going to compete with Visa, blah, 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 all this stuff. Let me just wrap something up. Solana's blockchain recently crashed because of how much transactions and actual usage there was, and that caused the price to drop. Whereas something like HBAR, standing at about 10,000 transactions per second, I feel like it's a little bit closer to what it can actually do, if not more, than maybe even Solana. Because if Solana crashed and HBAR hasn't yet, and they're talking already now that HBAR is considered the most used blockchain globally, considering by everything, it just goes to show that maybe HBAR is something people haven't been really looking at as much as they should have, or should in general. So I want to get into some other articles that HBAR, that I found on the HBAR website that are talking about basically just the partnerships and all this stuff. And one of the main things that I wanted to bring up was Chainlink. So the fact that HBAR and Chainlink have decided to become basically a unit, meaning that they're working together for interoperability, is a pretty large step forward for HBAR, because Chainlink is the first mover, one of the largest first movers for Oracle technologies, but also just in general, to integrate those oracles into the HBAR network would just make it a lot better. And Chainlink is a large company for crypto standards, especially considering its partnerships. And the fact that HBAR has some very large partnerships and they're partnering with Chainlink, it's just almost a no-brainer that it's almost like they're all working together for interoperability at this point. And the way I see it is that if HBAR becomes a very powerful blockchain, very useful with Chainlink oracles, that's a no-brainer that they'll be able to feed off of each other's market caps. Now, another thing too that I wanted to bring into was also the fact that recently even India's Institute of Technology, Madras, has officially joined part of the HBAR ecosystem, which adds to the long list of pretty big players that have joined the HBAR ecosystem. Just to say, just to basically add to the ecosystem, because I do want to go over it, because the ecosystem is actually part of why I'm so bullish on this project potentially in the future, is this. So you see right here, this is basically the ecosystem that we're looking at, right? You have the wallets, the SDKs, token issuers, exchanges, standard systems and integrations, securities and audits, which is big, explorers and council members as well. And I guess the main ones that you're always going to recognize out of these guys, because I'm sure a lot of these standards aren't really things that you see a lot, are basically, you got Boeing, which is pretty much like a large engineering company. You got Deutsche Telekom, which is a massive name for basically just media and communications. You got Google. I don't think I have to explain Google very much. We got IBM, which is basically it was a very large company that was dealing with basically encryption a long time ago. And for me personally, this is my opinion, I wouldn't be surprised to see IBM make a huge comeback with blockchain and blockchain technology, as well as encryption integrations into society. The other one includes LG Electronics and Tata Communications. So, I mean, these are pretty large names that are getting behind the project. And there's another one too that I wanted to mention here was Java as well. So Java coding, the language, they're basically all working together to create more for the user. So that's the ecosystem. It's a large ecosystem. And what's interesting about that ecosystem is a lot of that ecosystem is integrated into Chainlink's ecosystem of partners. So for me, it's looking at these two projects and it's like, hey, there's clearly a correlation now because they're publicly partnered as well as their ecosystems being publicly integrated into each other. Anyone who's watching this, who's bullish on Chainlink, could definitely, potentially be bullish on HBAR as well. So some other things that I wanted to mention too is that a leading supply chain company, ABC Global, they decided to use HBAR as their distributed ledger technology, meaning that they're going to be using that blockchain to be basically helping with supply chains globally. And if this is one of the leaders for that, then it's a no-brainer that HBAR's blockchain is designed for public use. It's one of my other guys. I love that team member right there, if you guys are watching that. Next thing I wanted to mention too was that HBAR, Hedera, the governing council, decided to add $5 billion worth of HBAR into an independent foundation ecosystem for development initiatives, meaning that they're already setting aside $5 billion to basically create and develop their ecosystem. So the first thing they did before anyone took profits was like, all right, we're going to make sure that our ecosystem is flourishing. And you want to see a company basically reinvest into itself. Another thing too that I wanted to basically mention was that Solidity, Hedera Solidity, which is the smart contracts that they invented, or rather that they use, are bringing the highest speed programmability to tokenization, meaning that through HBAR, the fact that it's such a lightweight blockchain and it's so advanced and developed, they're able to basically create a flexible environment for people to have fast and low fee, as well as industry standard Solidity smart contracts, which means that they'll be able to offer smart contracts that are just as good as Ethereum or many other blockchains that are boasting that, but as well as it being very lightweight, very fast, and like I said, just low fee, which is what a lot of people are looking into. And this is going to be big when you're looking at basically how much actually gets done on blockchains with smart contracts. In Q2 2021, Ethereum settled 2.5 trillion in transactions. That's insane. And that's only the tip of the iceberg. And with such a large amount of commerce that can't even be capitalized because of gas fees and gas wars on the Ethereum network, it's almost like a no-brainer that something like HBAR, like Hedera, would be able to offer more for less. And they'll be offering basically NFTs as well as a lot of other bonuses to their blockchain for the user. The other thing that I wanted to mention was this as well. And I don't want to get too much into the politics of the safe health, or rather, I don't want to get too much into the politics of COVID-19, but I have to mention briefly for Hedera what they plan on doing for COVID-19 and other infectious diseases. And it's very interesting. So with politics aside, left aside, no one agrees with the passports and blah, 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 whatever. Hedera here, they want to create a system where you could test yourself for any infectious disease and basically be able to get the test results very quickly through their apps as well as their testing. So right off the bat, that's huge, as we've seen in the last 2 years throughout this pandemic. While we might not necessarily agree with passports and all these other things that are authoritarian to some degree, we could all mutually agree that faster testing for our own health that could be in the hands of our own smartphone and a device that pairs with it is smart. Because that right there will stop the spread of a lot of other infectious diseases, not including COVID-19, like let's say HIV or like just in general, anything that could be spread. Imagine you could just test yourself, and instead of having to go through all these government things, it's like, oh, I got the result here, I'm safe, I could go about my life. Having a test in your hand and being able to do things without necessarily worrying about your information or the government, messing with you. So for me, I could see that as becoming something relatively large because they have the names behind them, Google, IBM, and all these guys, as well as they have basically the Alliance for Health with them. So I wanted to mention that as well because we've seen how much money has gone into testing and everything during COVID-19. Imagine being able to have a test conveniently in your hand on your own free will. So more or less, I guess that more or less wraps up what I had to say about HBAR and some of the applications that I could actually believe would make it huge. I want you guys to like, comment, and subscribe. Definitely check out our other videos. And once again, to all my viewers who are watching this, thank you so much for staying with us till 500. 1,000 is our next milestone, and we hope to get there soon for you guys. Have a great night.